I knew something was very wrong when the room started spinning. Not the normal dizzy feeling from my pain meds, this was different. My heart raced so fast, I thought it might explode. I couldn't catch my breath. The wall seemed to close in around me. Sandra? I called out weakly for my mother-in-law, who was downstairs making dinner. Something's wrong. No answer. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and took a picture of the pills in my little plastic organizer. Then I forced myself to crawl to the bathroom, stuck my fingers down my throat, and threw up everything I could. Tears streamed down my face as I slumped against the cold tile wall. That's when I saw her standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "What are you doing?" Sandra asked, her voice flat. Not concerned, not surprised. Just watching me, I think. "Something's wrong with my medication," I managed to say between gasps. She clicked her tongue. "You're being dramatic again. This is exactly why David asked me to help. You're completely unable to take care of yourself." David. My husband. Her son. The man who'd insisted his mother was the perfect solution to care for me after my back surgery, despite my protests. The man who was currently on a business trip 2 states away, while I was trapped in our house with a woman who had just tried to. What exactly? Hurt me? Kill me? I forced myself to look normal, to breathe. "You're right. I'm sorry. Maybe I just need to rest." She nodded, satisfied, and left me there on the bathroom floor. That night, when Sandra thought I was asleep, I took one of the pills from my organizer and used a test kit I'd ordered months ago when I was volunteering at the women's shelter. The kind they give women who think someone might have drugged their drinks. The liquid turned dark blue immediately. Benzodiazepines. Not my prescribed pain medication at all. My doctor had specifically warned me never to mix benzos with my pain medication. It could slow my breathing until I stopped altogether. Sandra hadn't just switched my pills. She'd given me a combination that could kill me. I lay in bed that night, shaking, trying to make sense of it. Sandra had always hated me. From the moment David brought me home 5 years ago, she'd made it clear I wasn't good enough for her precious son. But this was something else entirely. The truth was, our marriage had been in trouble even before my back injury. David worked constantly, and when he was home, he was distant. We hadn't had sex in almost a year. The accident, a bad fall down a flight of stairs at work, had only made things worse. I needed multiple surgeries. I couldn't work. I became, in Sandra's words, a burden. I'd overheard her on the phone with David a week ago. "She's dragging you down. You could have had such a different life." I took a deep breath and made myself think clearly. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my life. The next morning, I smiled at Sandra as she brought me breakfast, plain toast and a cup of tea. Plus my morning pills, of course. "Thank you so much for taking care of me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know what I'd do without you." She practically glowed with the praise. "Well, someone has to look after you properly." I pretended to take the pills, but slipped them under my tongue. When she left, I hid them in a tissue and flushed them down the toilet. For the next 3 days, I played the perfect patient. I complimented Sandra's cooking. I asked about her garden club. I mentioned how lucky David was to have such a devoted mother, all while secretly documenting everything. I took pictures of my prescription bottles and the pills she gave me. I recorded our conversations. I even set up my old laptop to capture video of her switching my medications when she thought I was napping. And I called my doctor, told him I was having unusual symptoms, asked if the pharmacy could have made a mistake. "Let me check your prescription," he said. After a minute of typing, he continued, "No, we sent the correct medication, and your husband picked it up himself just last week." My blood went cold. "My husband? Are you sure?" "Yes, David came by on Tuesday. Said you weren't feeling well enough to get it yourself." This wasn't just Sandra. David knew. He was part of this. I thought about our life insurance policy, the one he'd insisted we upgrade last year. How he'd been talking about starting fresh and making changes before my accident. How relieved he'd seemed when his mother offered to take care of me. That night, I called my sister Jen. We'd drifted apart since my marriage. Another red flag I'd ignored. David had always found reasons why we couldn't visit her. I need help. I whispered into the phone from the bathroom, shower running to mask my voice. I need to get out of here, but I can't do it alone. Jen didn't hesitate. Tell me what's happening. I explained everything, the pills, the recordings, my suspicions about David. Jesus Christ, she breathed. What do you need? I need 3 days, I said. Don't come here. Don't call the house. But on Saturday, I need you to pick me up 2 blocks down on Maple Street. I'll be there at noon. I'll be there. Should we call the police? I thought about it. Not yet. I need more proof first. After hanging up, I stared at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the pale, frightened woman looking back at me. 5 years of slowly disappearing. 5 years of, you're overreacting and you're too sensitive, and my mother means well. David was coming home tomorrow. I needed to be ready. The next day, I heard his car pull into the driveway. I was set up in the living room, looking appropriately weak and grateful. Sandra had spent the morning telling me how exhausted she was from taking care of me, how no one appreciated her sacrifices. David walked in, kissed his mother first, then came to give me a quick peck on the forehead. How's my patient doing? He asked, not quite meeting my eyes. Better now that you're home. I lied. Your mom has been amazing. They exchanged a look I pretended not to notice. I've been keeping her medication on schedule, Sandra said pointedly, though she's been a bit difficult at times. David frowned. Have you been giving Mom trouble? The old me would have apologized. Explained. Tried to smooth things over. Instead, I looked down. I'm sorry. The pain makes it hard to think sometimes. Well, I'm home now, he said, patting my hand like I was a child. Mom can get some rest. That night, David brought me my pills and a glass of water. I pretended to take them, hiding them in my cheek until he left. When I was sure he was downstairs, I took out one pill and tested it. Benzodiazepines again, but stronger this time. I listened to them talking in low voices downstairs. How long do we have to keep doing this? Sandra asked. The doctor said with her condition. It could happen any time, David replied. A blood clot, respiratory failure. It would be completely natural with her injuries. And you're sure about the insurance? $2 million, enough to pay off the house, set us both up nicely. I felt strangely calm as I recorded their conversation on my phone. The pieces were finally fitting together. The accidental fall that had seemed so strange. Me, who was always careful on stairs. The way David had insisted on this specific surgeon, this specific treatment plan, how he'd positioned himself as the devoted husband while making sure I was completely isolated. I thought back to other accidents over the years. The time my brake lines mysteriously failed, the severe food poisoning only I had experienced, the gas leak in our first apartment that I'd smelled but David had dismissed. How long had they been trying to kill me? The next morning, I asked for my laptop. I want to order you both something special, I explained, to say thank you. Sandra looked pleased. That's thoughtful of you. I'll bring it down. As soon as I had it, I backed up all my recordings to a private cloud account. Then, I wrote detailed emails to my sister, my old boss, and my college roommate, people I trusted, explaining everything, with the evidence attached. If anything happens to me, I wrote, this is why, this is who did it. I set the emails to send automatically in 5 days if I didn't cancel them. Then I put the final phase of my plan into motion. Sandra, I called out sweetly, could you come here for a minute? She came into the living room, where I was set up on the couch. What is it now? I was thinking about making a special dinner tomorrow night, to thank you both. I can't stand yet, but I could direct you. My grandmother's famous pot roast recipe. Her eyes narrowed. You want to cook? I want to contribute something. I feel so useless just lying here while you do everything. The flattery worked. Well, I suppose that would be nice for David. Great, I'll make a shopping list. The secret is a special blend of herbs. My grandmother was very particular about them. That afternoon, I asked David to help me to the bathroom. Once there, I purposely stumbled, clutching my back in pain. I think something shifted, I gasped. It hurt so much worse suddenly. Concern flickered across his face. Not for me, I realized, but for his plan. Should I call the doctor? No, I said quickly. Just get me my pain pills, the real ones, from the upstairs bathroom cabinet, not the ones your mother's been giving me. He froze. What are you talking about? I let tears fill my eyes. I know you've both been trying to help, but I need my actual prescription right now. The pain is too much. He stuttered something about being confused, then hurried upstairs. I heard cabinets opening and closing. When he returned, his face was carefully neutral. Here you go, he said, handing me 2 pills that looked exactly like the ones they'd been substituting. I took them without protest. Let him think I believed him. That night, I lay awake planning every detail. Testing the waters had confirmed my suspicions. Neither of them would admit what they were doing. They'd take it all the way to the end, which meant I needed to be perfect. The next morning, I gave Sandra my shopping list for the special dinner. These herbs are very specific, I told her. They need to be fresh. There's a specialty shop on 3rd Street that should have them. She looked annoyed, but took the list. This seems complicated. It's worth it, I promise. David always said it was his favorite meal I ever made. That got her. She couldn't stand the idea that I had provided something for her son that she couldn't. She left mid-morning to get the ingredients. As soon as she was gone, I dragged myself upstairs to their bathroom. Moving was agony with my back, but adrenaline kept me going. I found what I was looking for in Sandra's vanity drawer: her own prescription bottles, sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medication, blood pressure medicine, all benzodiazepines or similar sedatives. I took pictures, then struggled back downstairs before she returned. When Sandra came back with the shopping bags, I was ready. I'd set up in the kitchen, seated on a high stool, where I could supervise the cooking. This is actually really special for me, I told her as she unpacked the groceries. My grandmother taught me this recipe right before she died. She said to only make it for people who truly deserved it. Sandra didn't catch my meaning. She just nodded impatiently. The herbs need to be prepared in a very specific way. I continued. You have to crush them together to release the oils. I brought my grandmother's mortar and pestle down from the display shelf. I pointed to the heavy stone bowl and grinding tool sitting on the counter. A wedding gift from David's great-aunt, the only member of his family who had ever been kind to me. Sandra sighed but followed my instructions. She washed the herbs, patted them dry, and began crushing them with the pestle as I directed. The sharp scent of rosemary, thyme, and other herbs filled the kitchen. Now add just a sprinkle of this, I said, handing her a small envelope of white powder. It's a special salt blend, just a pinch. She took it without question. As she continued cooking, I watched her from my stool. The woman who had tried to murder me, calmly making dinner in my kitchen. The woman whose son I had loved, who had seen me only as an obstacle, an insurance payout. By the time David came home from work, the pot roast was simmering, filling the house with rich, savory smells. Something smells amazing, he said, coming into the kitchen. Your wife's grandmother's recipe, Sandra said, taking credit already. She's been instructing me all afternoon. It's her special dinner for us, I added, to show my gratitude. We gathered at the dining table, my first time eating there since my surgery. I'd insisted, saying it was important to me to have a proper family dinner. David helped me to my seat, playing the concerned husband for an audience of one. Sandra served the pot roast, proud of her work. I waited until they had both taken several bites before touching my own plate. This is delicious, David said, sounding surprised. It's the herbs, I replied. They make all the difference. I watched them eat, taking small bites of my own portion, mostly pushing the food around my plate. The herbs were doing their job, masking the bitter taste of the crushed pills I'd mixed into the special salt blend. Sandra's own medications ground into a fine powder. Not enough to kill them. I wasn't a murderer like they were, but enough to make them groggy, confused, and unable to stop what came next. Is something wrong with yours? Sandra asked, noticing I wasn't eating much. My stomach's been upset today, I said. But please, enjoy. I'm just happy to watch you both appreciate the meal. By the time we finished dinner, Sandra's speech was already slurring slightly. David kept blinking hard, like he was trying to clear his vision. I think I need to lie down, Sandra mumbled. I feel strange. Me too, David said, looking at me with sudden suspicion. What was in that food? I smiled. Just herbs, and a special family secret. I watched as understanding slowly dawned on his face. He tried to stand but staggered, gripping the table for support. What did you do? He whispered. The same thing you've been doing to me, I replied calmly. Only I didn't use enough to kill you. That's the difference between us. Sandra started to cry, big, messy tears rolling down her face. The drugs were hitting her harder. She was older, smaller than David. Let's get you both comfortable, I said, standing up. Despite my back pain, I felt stronger than I had in months. David, help your mother to the living room before you fall over too. He didn't argue. He could barely walk himself. But he managed to support Sandra to the couch. I followed behind them, carrying my phone. Sit down, David, I instructed. He collapsed into the armchair across from his mother. I took the love seat, positioning myself where I could see them both. Now we're going to have a family meeting, I said. And for once, I'll be doing the talking. Their eyes were unfocused, but they could still hear me. I pressed record on my phone and set it on the coffee table between us. Let's start with the pills, I said. The ones you've been giving me instead of my prescribed medication. The ones that could have killed me if I'd kept taking them. David shook his head weakly. Don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my evidence. Photos of my real pills next to the substitutes. The positive drug test results. The video of Sandra switching my medications. And then there's this, I continued, playing the recording of their conversation about the insurance money. Their own voices filled the room, discussing how my death would look natural, how they'd split $2 million. Sandra started sobbing harder. David just stared at me, hatred plain on his face, despite his drugged state. Why? I asked. We could have just divorced. You could have moved on with your life. Wouldn't get money. That way, he slurred, you'd take half. Always taking. 5 years of marriage reduced to a financial transaction. 5 years of trying to please a man who had been plotting my death. How long? I demanded. How long have you been trying to kill me? Sandra laughed suddenly, a harsh sound that made me shiver. Since the honeymoon, she said, her words running together. Told him you weren't right. Told him you'd ruin everything. I turned to David. The brakes on my car? The gas leak in our apartment? He didn't deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. I stood up, looking down at them. My husband and mother-in-law, the people who were supposed to love me, who had instead plotted my death over and over. Here's what's going to happen now, I said. I've documented everything. The switched medications, your conversations, this confession. It's all backed up to multiple locations. If anything happens to me, anything at all, it goes directly to the police. David's eyes narrowed. He was trying to think through the drug fog. You drugged us. They'll arrest you too. I shook my head. I used your mother's legally prescribed medications, which somehow found their way into food I barely touched. I can't imagine how that happened. Maybe the same way benzodiazepines ended up in my pill organizer instead of my prescribed pain medication. I leaned closer. The difference is, I have proof of what you did. And unlike you, I made sure you'll recover completely. By morning, you'll both be fine. No permanent damage. Because I'm not a killer. I let that sink in before continuing. I'm leaving tonight. My sister is picking me up. I've already packed what matters to me. But before I go, I want you to know that your plan failed. Not just to kill me, but to break me. I thought I'd feel satisfaction seeing them helpless like this. Instead, I just felt hollow, empty. These people had stolen 5 years of my life, had nearly taken all the rest of my years too. There's one more thing I said, taking a thick envelope from my pocket. Divorce papers, already filled out. They give me the house, my car, and half our savings. You get to avoid prison. Sign them now, and this recording never sees the light of day. I placed a pen in David's limp hand. He stared at the papers, then at me. You're blackmailing us, he mumbled. I'm negotiating with the people who tried to murder me, I corrected. Sign or I call the police right now. He signed. His signature was shaky but legible. Now I need witness signatures, I said, taking out my phone. Good thing I have friends on standby. I texted my sister, who was waiting nearby with 2 friends. They arrived within minutes. I'd explained the situation to them earlier. Not the drugged pot roast part, but everything else. They hadn't believed me at first, seeing David and Sandra's state change that quickly. What did you do to them? Jen whispered as her friends witnessed the divorce papers. Just gave them a taste of their own medicine, I replied. They'll sleep it off. With the papers signed and witnessed, I was ready to leave. I had my sister help me gather the last of my things. Photo albums, jewelry from my grandmother, important documents. Before walking out, I turned back to David and Sandra, who were both fighting to stay conscious. You won't see me again, I said. But remember, everything I have goes straight to the police if anything happens to me. If I get so much as a paper cut that seems suspicious, you'll both spend the rest of your lives in prison. David's eyes burned with hatred. You won't get away with this. I laughed. It felt strange. I hadn't laughed in so long. I already have. That's the difference between us, David. You spent years trying to kill me and failed. I spent one day planning and took everything that mattered to you. I nodded toward the divorce papers. You're free of me, just like you wanted, but not the way you planned. No insurance payout, no grieving widower act, just an empty house and the knowledge that I beat you. As I turned to leave, Sandra called out in a weak voice, He never loved you, not for 1 minute. I paused, her words hitting me like a physical blow despite everything I already knew. Then I straightened my shoulders. I know that now, I said quietly, and that's why I'm finally free. My sister helped me to her car. As we pulled away from the house I'd lived in for 5 years, I didn't look back. We stayed in a hotel that night. I slept better than I had in months, despite the pain in my back. In the morning, Jen brought me coffee and sat on the edge of my bed. What now? She asked. I sipped the coffee, savoring the simple pleasure of knowing it wasn't poisoned. Now I rebuild. 2 days later, I was settled in Jen's guest room when the texts started coming from David. The drugs had worn off, and reality had set in. You can't do this to me. It's my house too. Sandra's having chest pains. If she dies, it's your fault. I'll tell everyone you're crazy. Who do you think they'll believe? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called my lawyer, a shark of a woman Jen had introduced me to, and let her handle everything. The divorce was finalized in record time. David didn't fight it. He couldn't, not with the evidence I had. 3 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop when a woman approached my table. It took me a moment to recognize her, Elizabeth, David's cousin. Can I join you? She asked hesitantly. I nodded, curious. She folded her hands on the table. I heard about the divorce. David's been telling everyone you had a mental breakdown, that you became paranoid and violent. I just stared at her, waiting. But I don't believe him. She continued. Sandra's been different, scared. And David sold the house way under market value. They're both acting like people with something to hide. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Elizabeth looked down. Because 5 years ago, David was engaged to my best friend Melissa. She died in a car accident 2 months before their wedding. Brake failure. My blood went cold. Another woman. Before me. The insurance paid out then too, Elizabeth said quietly. Not as much as yours would have, but enough. I always thought it was strange how quickly he moved on. How we met you just a month after her funeral? I reached for my water glass with a shaking hand. Did you ever say anything? She shook her head, tears in her eyes. What could I say? I had no proof, just a feeling. But when I heard about your divorce, how sudden it was. I thought maybe you knew something. I knew enough, I said carefully. She nodded, understanding my caution. I just wanted you to know, whatever really happened, I believe you made the right choice getting away from them. After she left, I sat there for a long time, thinking about Melissa, a woman I'd never met, a woman who might have sat in this very coffee shop, a woman who hadn't been as lucky as me. That night, I made a decision. I took all my evidence, the recordings, the photos, the drug tests, and compiled it into one file. I sent copies to the local police, the district attorney, and to Melissa's parents. Then I wrote a long email to the detective who had investigated Melissa's accident 5 years ago, suggesting they might want to take another look at the brake failure, and the insurance payout, and the grieving fiancé who had moved on so quickly. I knew I was breaking my agreement with David. He might come after me now, but I couldn't live with myself knowing he might do this again to someone else. 2 weeks later, David and Sandra were arrested. The case made local headlines. Mother and son charged in murder plot against wife. When investigators reopened Melissa's case, they found enough evidence to charge them in her death too. I testified at their trial 6 months later. I looked them both in the eye as I described how they had systematically tried to kill me, how they had switched my medications, hoping I would die of an accidental overdose, how they had planned to collect my life insurance. David was sentenced to 30 years. Sandra got 25. As they were led from the courtroom, Sandra turned to look at me one last time. He was my whole world, she said, her voice cracking. Everything I did was for him. I thought about that for a long time afterward. How love could become so twisted. How a mother's devotion could turn into something so dark. I wondered if she regretted it now, knowing she'd spend what remained of her life in prison, separated from the son she'd tried to protect. It's been 2 years since then. My back eventually healed, though I still have pain sometimes. I moved to a small town by the ocean, somewhere no one knows my story. I used part of the divorce settlement to open a small bookstore. I made new friends who never knew me as David's wife, who see me as I really am. Sometimes I still have nightmares about those days in the house, taking pills that were slowly killing me. Sometimes I wake up gasping, convinced I'm dying. But then I remember, I survived. I fought back. I won. I recently heard that David got into a fight in prison. Another inmate had seen his case on the news. He lost 3 teeth and gained a permanent scar across his face. I didn't feel anything when I heard. Not happiness, not sadness, just nothing. That's how I know I'm truly free of him. His power over me is gone. My mother-in-law took my trust, my husband took my love, and together they nearly took my life. But in the end, I took something much more valuable from them. I took their future and reclaimed my own.